Hello, my name is Eric Farron. I am a member of the Central Utah Writing Project. I work at Spanish Fork Junior High, and we're here to talk a little bit about how we use writing in our classroom. I teach math and computers.
I'm Emily Richards, and I am also a member of the Central Utah Writers Project, and I teach AP Human Geography and Geography in Riverton, Utah.
And my name is Jenna Baumgart, also a member of the Central Utah Writing Project. I teach high school, I teach orchestra at West Jordan High School and Copper Hills High School, also guitar and concurrent enrollment music 1010.
What a very good question. I get that all the time. Have you ever been in your classroom and the students are like going, when am I ever going to use this? Or why do I have to do writing in a math class?
Try it in a music class.
Oh yeah. But the fact of the matter is, one of the neat things about using writing is it really clarifies kids' thinking. I mean, for example, I can ask them, write down how you would explain to someone how to do the quadratic formula. And it really gets them to stop for a minute and realize what's behind it. And so that's the reason why I use it in my classroom.
I feel like it helps them organize their thoughts well. For example, this week we did an assignment where I taught them about latitude and longitude, but then I had them explain it back. And it is a way to check for understanding, but at the same time they're continuing to learn because they have to put it in a different context than I just gave it to them verbally.
For me, it's a matter of them taking responsibility for the things they should be doing. We work in small groups, and they don't work in those small groups in class necessarily, they work outside of class time. And they have a scribe that has to post what happened in rehearsal that day, what they had scheduled to do, what actually occurred, and then each member of the group has to comment on what worked and what didn't. So I can see how they're processing what I'm showing them in class as well, and teaching it to each other.
That's a great idea.
And they're reflecting on their learning at the same time,
Right.
and
Right.
the way that they learn.
One of the things that I love is it really also in mathematics, one of the biggest problems that I have is getting them to see when am I going to use even the mathematics portion. And so the neat thing that writing does for them is I literally give them prompts and things to say, okay, how would you use this? And it really gets them to clarify some of their thoughts and thinking.
Well, and I always just want to say things like, well, if you're a doctor, are you going to use writing? Every profession uses writing. You can't get away without it in anything you do. So,
No.
Of course, because it's not an English class, you can still write.
Yeah, and for me too, seeing that I've got some kids that are very vocal in class and vocal in a group, as opposed to the ones that are more withdrawn. The withdrawn ones then have an equal voice in writing. They're not, where they won't put themselves out there in front of their peers, they will be comfortable writing.
I love that.
I cheat. I don't really grade my students on their conventions. And that's the neat part about the types of writing that I give my students is I don't have to pay as much attention to all the English conventions. The important thing is I'm looking for what they know, what they've learned.
Right. And as I was reading through the chapter on this in Debbie's book, she pointed out numerous times that a lot of times writing is ungraded. I mean, especially the mechanics of the writing, it doesn't matter. You're looking for content. And so, again, you can use content writing in anywhere and it applies.
It's nice to be the non-threatening teacher when it comes to writing, because I get some really creative things back. Not just explaining what happened, but explaining what happened with superheroes and all these other great things.
Yeah.
And there's a dialogue that happens between the students too as they're posting these, and they get to know each other really well.
I love the prompts that are more personal. And so
Right.
those I don't want to grade at all. In fact, I don't even collect them. But I want them to write down some of their thoughts, and I just walk around and make certain that they're following the assignment.
Well, I think writing in our content areas might encourage the reluctant writers because it's not the big scary grammar. It's just write how you feel, write what you think, and then
And
it
it's not
gives
the
them a
10-page
voice.
paper. It's not
Right.
the 10-page paper.
And most of the time it's short little writing assignments.
Right.
It's not.
It's a small little, sometimes I say, look, I don't care if you write a paragraph, just make a list, something
Yeah.
that
Write something down.
and that's the important thing. Write down what you've learned and what you know.
Right.
Mine takes all of about 2.5 minutes at the beginning of the period. That's the neat thing, you know, if you use it as a bell work prompt, it really gets them into the lesson early.
Yeah.
And so, number one, it's not taking away from lesson plan because you're getting them started. And number two, I don't grade them, so it really doesn't matter.
They're just getting the practice in, the writing.
Yeah, for me, my writing is largely done outside of class, which I don't see as an issue because 9/10 of those guys are on the computer when they're at home in the evening anyway.
That's a good point.
And I'm not asking for huge amounts of writing. I'm asking for almost some days the equivalent of a Facebook post.
Right.
So,
And I think we kind of addressed in the last question, but it's supposed, oftentimes, writing to learn is short and ungraded. And
Yes.
so if it takes you time to grade, then maybe think about what you really care about in the assignment. Do you care that they wrote 500 to 700 words, or can you quickly look over that and make sure that they learned something while they were writing?
One of the big things in our school is the idea of formative assessments. Well, formative assessments are while you're in the middle of teaching. Can you get some feedback on what they're retaining and what they're remembering? These sorts of short writing responses, ungraded, that you can collect and go through really quickly. It takes all of about 30 seconds, and you can figure out who's got it and who doesn't.
and if you're planning a lesson anyway, I mean, if you're making lesson plans, plan the time.
Yeah.
15 minutes isn't that big of a deal.
Right.
It's not going to detract. And if you get that knowledge that the students are seeing or understanding, then it's 15 minutes well worth it.
Right, it's totally worth it. And if you have I mean, when we take our college courses, we learn that every student learns differently.
Mhm.
And so if you use writing as a way for students to learn the content, you're going to get the attention of some students where, you know, maybe lecture just doesn't work for them, or maybe watching a video doesn't work for them, or, you know, too bad. But so when you're asking them to learn through writing, you're going to just pull in a different group of kids that aren't used to that in your class.
In this case, as you take a look at writing, in mathematics, is there really a correct way? You have to kind of learn for yourself what is correct. We have some rubrics. Rubrics are a great thing in this case. If you have something specific that you want them to get out of your writing, then put it down in a rubric that says, I'm looking for this, this, and this, and let the students know. And then just give them a small little writing prompt where you're looking for those pieces that the students are looking for.
I don't know, I think some of mine, I'll observe things that probably aren't going exactly as they should be going, but I see later posts and other additions that you can see that they're working through the problem. So sometimes I just let it go and see if they can't work through it on their own, which, I mean, isn't that what we want? I mean, don't we want independent thinkers that can work, you know, in my case, they're working as a group usually, that can come through the problem. If they go really off course, then yeah, I'm going to steer things back to where they need to be, but by and large, they'll figure it out for themselves.
Yeah, and then it's a good indication to you what you need to reteach or what you need to emphasize. I think the nice thing about writing is that there's rarely a right or wrong answer. You know, you say write a research paper about this. Even if you're doing a research paper, you're going to get 10 different research papers on the same subject. And so, as far as the question that was asked came from a science teacher at my school, and so he was concerned that if you say, okay, go learn about mitosis, they're going to just not get it at all. But there's no problem with front loading and giving them some background knowledge and stuff like that, and then giving them some resources to use to compose their assignment. And then, you know, so it just depends on what you're talking about. But learning information incorrectly or the wrong information isn't the worst thing that can happen.
Plus, there's one of the neat things that I've heard is you can create guided discussions. As you have them write down just a few short things of some of the things they learned, collect them, and then you can get a quick overview of some of the ones that have some good answers. And then when you can hand them back their writing, and then you can specifically target students that will guide the discussion in the direction that you want to help the majority of students learn.
Yeah, good.
For me, I started at the first day of school. I mean, that's really where it started. When I started at the first day of school and I said, pull out a piece of paper, read them a quick passage and had them write down a few things. things, especially making it personal to them, then all of a sudden for the entire rest of the next several months, my students just expected to write. It was a part of the class.
Yes, I think that is key. And I've always heard or learned that you never use writing as a punishment, you never use reading as a punishment, because then they'll just associate those two things with negativity. And so as long as you never make a habit or even start to use it as a punishment, then they can't see it as a punishment. They see it as a part of your class.
Right.
That's what we do.
I think where we post on the wiki, I join them. So my posts are right up there along with their own. So they know that they're not the only ones on there doing this. I'm on there checking them, and I've got 5-6 classes that I'm doing this with. So they know that I'm involved, and it's important to me as well.
Well, on the first day of school, you know, when I gave them the writing prompt, I says, now you have to understand, I'm not going to make you do something that I wouldn't, so I write up my own. And it's really fun that first day of school when they're all very shy and quiet, and I ask for some volunteers to read what they wrote, and they won't volunteer at all, and so I'll read mine, and then they say, okay, well, this is acceptable, this is the way it is.
Yeah, I think that's something they really emphasized when we did the Summer Institute, is writing with your students. And if your students can see that it's something that's valuable to you, then they'll value it more. Yeah. And I feel really strongly about that.
The neat thing about the type of writing that I ask my students to do, where you're writing for learning, is there's not that huge ability gap, because they're just sharing in their own words, in their own ways, what they have. Some of them write long, elaborate paragraphs, my honors kids, and then others just write a few thoughts and words or phrases that are barely readable. But it still gives me enough that I'm able to see what they know and what they've learned.
And I think that's the nice thing about writing in other content areas, because in English, as a teacher or as a student, you might feel the pressure to be a good writer and to get everything just right. But when you're just using writing as a tool for learning in your content area, you're not using grammar as a tool for learning. You're using whatever their ability is to show you what they know.
Where I'm teaching music classes and orchestra classes, there are varying ability levels anyway, and they can see that in class. So I don't think that the idea of varying ability levels in writing even bothers them in that aspect, as opposed to, well, this is an English honors class. This is not acceptable for English honors class. How can you write like that in English honors class? Whereas, you know, what I'm dealing with is everybody just puts in what they know, what they think is important, and everyone accepts that for what it is.
Writing is, in this case, is a tool of communication. They're communicating back to us a lot of the content area that we're trying to get across. They're trying to communicate back to me their understanding of the mathematical concept. To me, it's not important all the various different conventions that go along with it.